if you're not investing right now, or you're making one of the biggest and most expensive mistakes of your entire life. And I'm going to show you exactly why. I truly believe that. And I think investing gets mixed up with taking really risky bets sometimes. And I think that's, probably exacerbated by the huge increase in AI stocks going up, 150% or something like that. I think investing should be like a car bill or a phone bill or something like that, something that is so automatic that you don't even notice it. For me, I want to invest, because I want to retire early. I want to have that kind of freedom to do, what I want and when I want it. And that doesn't come by working a 9 to 5 and putting money into a savings account and just, watching it grow. I'll put a kind of graph here of, what a $100 investment for every single month for 30 years would look like, an average, market return. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars, and all you're doing is putting it into an index fund and waiting for it to grow. You're not doing anything. You're not trading. You're not looking at charts or anything like that. And I think that is so easily kind of mixed up, like I was saying. It doesn't have to be this massive commitment. Again, $25 is enough, and $50 is really enough. Whatever you can put away, it's about building a habit. And if you're 18, 20, 25 years old, these are the core years where you need to begin putting money away. And I tell my friends this, I tell my family this, whatever money you can put into the stock market, it doesn't matter if we're at all-time highs or all-time lows, because you're not buying for the all-time highs or all-time lows. You're dollar cost averaging the entire way. And again, I'll maybe put a little graph right here of what dollar cost averaging actually does, but you can imagine, you're just cutting through all the noise. You're over 30 years, 20, 30 years, your investment will be the average of the market, which, over time has done pretty well. I think that, a lot of people get really in their heads as they get older that it's too late for them. I see people talk online, on Reddit and stuff like that, they're 40 years old or something like that, and they think that they've missed the boat or something like that because they're 40 years old. But the reality is like, yeah, maybe you retire at 65, maybe you retire at 60, maybe you still retire early. You still have 20 years of compounding behind you. 20 years ago, what was that? That was 2006. That was before the '08 crash. If you began investing in 2006 and you just dollar cost averaged the entire time, so you caught, the entire downturn and all the way up, you've gotten this huge increase in your portfolio during that time because of how tech stocks have done over the 2010s and 2020s. If you're let's say 18 though, or even just say 25, let's say you're 25 years old and you just begin putting money into an index fund, if you want to retire at 50 at that point, that's 30 years away. 30 years ago at this point is 1996. The dot-com crash didn't happen, '08, COVID, those hadn't even happened 30 years ago. So the point I'm trying to make with that is that you can't really predict, how the market's going to operate in 30 years or where things are going to go, which is why it's so hard. And it's so funny seeing people talk about AI stocks and all this sort of stuff. You have no idea where this technology is going to be in 30 years. And so the most important thing for me in my investments is not to invest on, sectors and what I think is going to do well into the future. It's to invest into the world economy, or into the US economy for that matter. It doesn't even have to be the world. If you think that the US economy is going to grow between now and 30 years from now, that's probably a place you want to be in. The same thing with the world economy. If you think that the world economy is going to grow over the next 30 years, put your money into an all market index fund, into, like a VEQT in Canada or something, or, I know it's US facing, but VTI, for example. I think where people get a lot wrong with planning for retirement is that they underestimate just how much money they're going to need, and I think they under contribute to their future planning. And I don't mean under contributing to their portfolio. I mean kind of under contributing to certifications that they get right now, into a better paying job, into, spending less money, managing your expenses a little bit. Not everything is about putting money into the stock market. That's a really good habit to build. And I, again, would encourage that. And that's what we should try to do as people in their, late teens, 20s, 30s, I'd even say, late 30s, early 40s, aggressively put money into the stock market, make that habit. But more importantly, do what you can control in your finances, change that around. So go get a higher paying job. If you're making 60K right now, try to find a job that pays you 65 and you get almost a 10% increase in your salary, but don't increase your expenses. Put that all into savings or a down payment for a house or into the stock market in general. The other thing is, I think managing your expenses is such an underrated skill. And this is kind of building on, what I was talking about, making things a habit. You have to make saving money a habit as well. And I don't mean saving money into a savings account. I mean saving money on like day-to-day activities. There's no reason that you need to go and buy, coffee every single day, or you need to go and have 10 subscriptions or something like that. And this is such a boomer kind of, mentality. And I completely think that it's ridiculous to say, don't get a matcha latte. But I do think there's a lot of truth to saying, don't get a matcha latte every single day. If a matcha latte, let's not even just say matcha latte. I think that is a very boomer thing to kind of say. But if you were to get like, a Starbucks drink that's $5 right now. Let's just say $5, okay? If you got that every working day, so 5 days out of the week, that's $25 a week. Times that by 52 weeks in a year, that's over $1,000 a year you're spending on a coffee. Whereas you could go out to a store and you could buy a case of coffee for $20, and that can make you about 20-30 cups of coffee or something like that. It's those small things. I'm not saying cut out going out to Starbucks. Like, go out to Starbucks. You work hard. Like, you should treat yourself to things that you enjoy. But at the same time, you have to realize that $1,000 extra a year, roughly, is a lot of money. And I'm sure that you could probably look into your finances and find about 12 different things that have about a $5 a day impact, whether that's a subscription or whether that's maybe going out to eat twice a week instead of maybe 6 times a month, which would be 1.5 every week. Those small things will add up, because cutting out coffee is not going to be that big of a difference. It's like $1,000 a year. Yeah, it's a lot, but like, I like my coffee. Okay, fine. Let's just say you bring that down by 5 coffees a week to 4 coffees a week. Now we're at $20 a week. So you're less than like $900 a year then. So you've just saved $100 a year. And if you do that over 10 things, that's $1,000 extra a year. You don't have to cut things out. You just need to make sure you manage them correctly. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of get into their heads of like this whole investing thing, like I don't have the money to invest. It's like, yeah, you don't with current spending habits. But if you really kind of dissect what you're doing, I think you can find $25-50 a week, even, I'd say, extra to put away into your portfolio, into index funds, which is, the most important thing right now for people of the age of mid-20s, early 30s, and even younger. But the point I'm really trying to make is it's super important to build habits, and it obviously transcends finance, but I'm really focused on the finance piece of this. But it's so important to build a habit. If you can't build a habit to put away $25 a week, you're not going to be able to build a habit to go to the gym, every single day or a few times a week. You're not going to be able to build a habit to go into a 9 to 5. You're not going to be able to build a habit to, keep friendships, going. Like, it's such a universal skill. But again, I think on the finance side, it's so much more important, because when you build these habits today, you're essentially guaranteeing your future, and I'm not saying that the stock market's going to continue to go up by 10% year over year, but like it would be pretty surprising if the stock market did not go up over a 30-year time period by an average of 5 to 6% minimum, I would say. And so building those habits of putting away money, when you have a little bit extra, or trying to find a little bit more money, when you're just trying to add to your portfolio. Those are things that are not difficult, I would say. Not inherently difficult. What is inherently difficult is being, late 40s and early 50s and having to put away thousands of dollars because you didn't set yourself up for the future that you want to have today. And that is, I think, the scariest thing for me. And that's why I invest. That's why I put money away at a consistent rate into an index fund, a low-cost index fund, and I just watch it grow. Because I don't want to be I don't want to have back pain and knee pain and have to figure out how I'm going to put away $2,000 a month because right now I wasn't able to sacrifice, a little bit here and there. I don't know. I'm really interested in this kind of stuff. I'm really interested in building long-term wealth. I think that it's a, really intriguing kind of proposition to kind of sacrifice a little bit and be able to build a future for not that much money in the grand scheme of things. But I'm curious what you guys think. I don't know. Like, am I missing something, I guess? Like, it seems trivial almost. It seems super easy to kind of build this long-term wealth that I'm talking about, that it's almost like, why is not everybody doing this? And I agree, like some people aren't making enough money to do it, but like in the end of the day, it's like we are just talking about, it's almost too easy. Like it's almost like, okay, you just put away a little bit and it grows. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. I'll be making more videos like this, just yapping about finances, stocks and stuff like that. So if you're interested, yeah, subscribe, leave a comment below, on that point. But yeah, thanks guys, appreciate it, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.